that hasn't either been developed or protected. So one of these is an area just up from Deer Prairie. It's sort of opposite Snookhaven. It's owned by the Diocese of Venice. And the other is this Welland Park property on the west side of the river. So this is a map of the villages of Welland Park, and you can see Village H over here. This originally apparently was supposed to be a park, and I've seen it in different versions of it on different maps. I think it's sort of gone away, but it reflects an original commitment to have some significant parkland on the other side of the road there. So this is the area I'm primarily interested in, is what's adjacent to the river, but that doesn't mean I'm not interested in the rest of it. So there's that park parcel. So here you can see H, which is the top one, and L, which is the lower one. And I tried to think of, like if someone asked me, how would you describe that shape? The best I could come up is a Pez dispenser with a little head sticking out of it. Does anyone ask you what's the shape of that? Now my understanding is they intend to develop the southern one first, L first, and then H. So when you look at the setting, almost everything in this area is already committed. If it's in that golden color, it's already developed. I sort of set Warm Mineral Springs aside because I never know what's happening with Warm Mineral Springs, but it's distinctive. And then the green, obviously, is protected land. And then there's some islands in the river, and these are connected, some to manufactured housing, and these are connected to the Welland Park people. But the point of this is that this is the only land left. This is North Fork's chance to either get it right or get it wrong on the Myakka. There's no other place in the city of North Fork where they could actually do something right by the river. This is it. So this is the current situation. Sarasota County recently bought 25 acres up here. This is 93 acres owned by Swiftmud. These islands in pink are owned by the Welland people. This may also be, Sarasota owns these parcels, this parcel, this is the state of Florida. I think these are also state of Florida, but the property appraiser doesn't even mention those.
It's CWA, isn't it?
What?
It's not the CWA, the Curve
It could be, yeah. Probably is. So this was going to be a really spiffy graphic, but it just got way too complicated. So you'll have to bear with me. So this first line, this little wiggly line, this is the 220-foot Myakka protection zone, this white line. And they've basically agreed, Welland Park has agreed not to develop in there. Now, they thought it was 200 feet, not 220, and there are a few incursions, but basically they've sort of got that part. This blue dotted line is the limit of moderate wave action. So somebody has a model that suggests in a bad storm with water coming up the Myakka that these properties could actually see wave action, which is a whole different thing to contemplate. I think this dotted line is the high-risk flood area, and I think the white line, let me go back. I think the white line divides the FEMA Zone AE with a 8-foot elevation from the FEMA Zone AE with a 9-foot elevation. And then the red might be, let's see, the red might be the Zone 5 evacuation zone. It was just driving me crazy. So there's the limit of moderate wave action, and this is the city limits. So this portion of the Welland Park is actually outside the city limits in the unincorporated county. That piece. And then this red tint is the high-risk flood zone. So all of this on the other side of South River Road is in the high-risk flood zone. So this is what they were proposing close to at the north end. And so you can see the dark green is wetland, and then they have the 220-foot buffer, and then they've got their bar lakes and their development. So, the question is, as they're going forward and seeking their zoning map amendment, Kimley Horn went ahead and made a list of comp plan goals, objectives, and policies that they wanted to let people know about. And they luckily said that it wasn't intended to be exhaustive, which is likely because I think this is the list of the policies they listed, and this may take a little while. So, policy, this first blue one, when the city redesignates previously privately owned lands to public on the future land use map as conservation or recreation space, the development rights should be maintained. So if they were to change the designation, they would still keep their development rights. Then it talks about transfer of development rights or awarding of intensity or density bonus. And it says property owners shall be awarded double the development rights. So if they would pull back from the river, they could get additional density, according to how I read this. And then 1.7, they shall establish close coordination through negotiations with property owners for actions including the outright purchase of properties and the use of transfer of development rights, as well as other strategies that may be used to bring private lands into public control. So the comp plan of Northport says we can do this. We could actually buy land and protect it if we wanted to. Then in the conservation section, it says that there may be instances where the city wishes to classify privately owned platted lots or tracts designated as conservation. Now, this is not designated as conservation. This is shown as village. But the density intensity shall be the same as low density permitting. The owner shall be encouraged to seek other opportunities, including transfer of development rights, land trade, and acquisition to preserve such lands in undeveloped condition. Where conservation through land development regulation is not sufficient, which could be in this case, land acquisition alternatives shall be pursued through city applications to available state and federal grant programs, and we'll talk about some of those later. Development which affects the Wild and Scenic River has to meet or be more stringent than the standards for the Myakka Wild and Scenic River designation. That's good. No development order shall be issued which would permit unmitigated development in the 100-year floodplains. Well, they will tell you they're mitigating it, but this is still suggestive. And the city shall discourage densification and intensification within hurricane evacuation zones A and B, which this includes, and the FEMA flood zone AE. So, according to this, they're supposed to discourage development there. Now, who knows what shall discourage means, but each village should have a well-defined edge that probably should include green belts and wildlife corridors. This has to do with the initiation of the village district plan development. I don't know where this fits in the process. I don't know whether the train already left the station and this has already happened, or we're just starting this. But if we're just starting it, the identification and quality and character of native habitats is supposed to be in a report. They're supposed to identify both the usable land area and the need for the proposed development. 7, identify the existing and proposed land uses next to the property, so it's supposed to be taken in the context. Preparation of a map identifying any perceived opportunities and constraints. I don't think that's been done. And they have to provide an opportunity to the public to review the findings of the site analysis. For villages and transfer development right, it's supposed to preserve other important uplands and wildlife corridors. So it would seem that this is a possibility to use transfer development rights. The city shall continue to explore alternatives for necessary roadway improvements based on evacuation. So I think evacuation, we saw a few months ago when the city was trying to convince the MPO that they needed a road that went, was it Price they were going to extend? They're going to extend Price all the way across the Mac River, which is illegal. But they're really in a swivet about hurricane evacuation. And so if they're concerned about evacuation, they should take this parcel into account. The City of Northport shall protect, conserve, and enhance its natural, environmental, and historic resources. That sounds good. Provide for the protection and enhancement of critical water resources, biologically productive flora and fauna, and wildlife habitats. They should include design components that enhance the movement of wildlife through the maintenance or creation of wildlife corridors and the network of habitat connectivity. Then this conservation element is crazy. They should strive to identify all sustainable native vegetative communities and conserve and maintain them. They should seek assistance from FWC and FDEP in identifying sustainable flora and fauna habitats. They should conduct by 2020 an inventory analysis of areas containing critical wildlife and upland habitat. Does anyone know if that's happened? Chuck's shaking his head. So, the city shall continue to seek local, state, and federal funding sources in the protection, restoration, and management of critical environmental systems, including uplands. In order to preserve and enhance the function of the 100-year floodplain and associated habitat, including wetlands, the city shall utilize the transfer of development rights or other techniques and appropriate construction methods within the FEMA 100-year floodplain. And they should determine whether amendments will be necessary to strengthen the city's ability to protect the floodplain. They're supposed to support the efforts and recommendations of intergovernmental organizations concerning the Myakka, which is the Myakka River Management Coordinating Council, and it talks about the buffers, which here says clearly 220 feet. They're supposed to protect native soils, which sounds a little odd, but what I like about it is it talks about construction of stem walls and pilings. So instead of putting in fill to get the homes up, they should be elevated without fill, which gives you the potential to save some of the native habitat around it. There's supposed to be an interconnected network of blueways and greenways. The city is going to promote the procurement of greenways for expanding linear parks and requiring the necessary to link publicly owned conservation lands and recreation areas within and outside the city limits. They're going to conduct a survey every 5 years of community desires. Has that happened recently?
Yeah, just did.
They just did?
Yeah.
And what were the community desires?
They didn't give us the results yet.
Okay. I wish we'd had this talk sooner. And they're supposed to provide appropriate public access to conservation areas. Mention some Myakka River Coordinating Council, which is actually the Myakka River Management Coordinating Council, but that's okay. They're supposed to strengthen and diversify the natural resources. They're supposed to compensate for the actual loss of property caused by any action of the city, which seems appropriate, and provide a mechanism whereby land use controversies are solved without formal court action. City shall discourage further development and redevelopment within these flood zones, and again talk about elevating structures via stilts or stem walls. Then this talks about requiring a minimum elevation of 5 feet above the base flood elevation. So the area closest to the river, my understanding, has a base flood elevation of 9 feet. So now you add 5 feet to that, so your living room floor is going to be 14 feet above sea level, above the ground level. So I think that's a special kind of person that's interested in getting a house where the first floor is 14 feet. Now you can have an elevator, you can have ramps, you can have a number of things. That's a different type of living when your first floor is 14 feet above the ground. And then it talks about the protection, preservation, and planting of native vegetation. Again, discourage the densification and intensification of land within the hurricane evacuation zones. Identify and limit development that it might be impacted by sea level rise. So the city is going to need a model of projected sea level rise. I don't know if they have one at the moment. Direct density and intensity away from areas that are at high risk of damage from sea level rise, storm surge, and coastal flooding. So we saw the area of moderate wave action, so the development should be directed away from that.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Are they planning on putting houses in there?
Yes. Yeah, no, and.
Do we know how many?
No, I don't. The city shall protect significant natural and cultural resources from the perils of sea level rise, storm surge, and flood events. Continue to apply for grants to restore and enhance shorelines, wetlands, drainage systems, support initiatives of acquisition of lots and parcels along rivers. They shall abide by state local agreement regarding the Myakka. I think this might be a due here. I think we just did these, yeah. So, what are the options? Like, where do we go from here? What are the implications? So, this is for Village H. It's 451 acres. Single-family homes at 1.3 dwelling units, so 625 units they want to put there. Existing wetland area 135 acres and wetland impact area 18.17. I'm not sure exactly what that means, and it's in the AE. A lot of it's in the AE. But, so this is their proposed, what they're proposing, and you can see the dark green along the river has been protected, and then they have their 220 feet from the wetland. Then they have all these lakes and this wetland system, and then these yellow areas are the gray is the roads, and the yellow are the lots.
So that's 450 acres, and they're going to put 625 houses in there.
450 minus the...
625 units on 451 acres.
So,
Minus the lakes.
well, minus the wetland area, I believe.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, when you say lakes, do you mean retention ponds?
yeah. They'll sell them as lakes. I'm not going to tell people, your home's on a beautiful retention pond. We'll talk about retention ponds in a minute, because how retention ponds function elsewhere in the city, in my opinion, pretty different than how they're going to function here. If you're worried about water coming up from Charlotte Harbor, it doesn't matter how big or deep your pond is. As a practical matter, there's a nearly infinite amount of water in Charlotte Harbor, so it doesn't care if there's a foot of storage or 2 feet of storage. The whole area is going to be inundated.
That place floods like you don't know.
So here's a little close-up. And you can see they are nipping in, like this clips in there and that lot clips in there. So and that was with 200 feet, so they need to redraw that.
So what's the area buffer? Are they
So-
building concrete walls?
No, there's not going to be any concrete walls. But this will probably, all this will be filled, this will be excavated, and this will be filled. And I'm worried, you see how scrawny this drainage, so this drainage feature comes through here, and then they're going to have these ponds on the other side. So in my way of thinking, when we're in a drought condition, the water that might be flowing through here is going to percolate in and move laterally into these ponds. So I think it's going to tend to dry this system out, which is going to make it easier for salt water to come up. So I'd be afraid that the habitat along here, I think, will change if you put lakes on either side of it. But that's just a theory at this point. So there's a program called the Everglades to Gulf Conservation Area, and this is a project of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And this is the extent of the entire project. It goes from up in Polk County, this whole area. And it's a federal program. 90% of the land they are dealing with is going to be conservation easements. Only 10% is going to be a fee simple acquisition. But it includes this area right here. So what they're saying is, in theory, there's federal money to buy a conservation easement over some portion of Village H. So that's the feds. This is the Florida Forest Service, and this is the State Forest. And this green area here is the optimal boundary that the State Forest has. So the State Forest System has expressed an interest in acquiring this property. Do they have any money? I doubt it. But they think this would be a valuable addition. And this is mostly that Village L. to the south of H. And you can see the state forest here and over there. This is,
So the pest dispenser will be right up against the forest.
so what?
The
Yeah,
pest
this-
dispenser will be right up against the
yeah,
forest.
yeah, there will be people in here next to the forest. This is from Swiftmud. So this is a map of lands that Swiftmud thinks they might be interested in acquiring. Again, you don't know if they have any money, but you can see this comes all the way up to the river and includes, so in theory, the Water Management District might be interested. So whether or not these outfits have money, what they're signaling is that they think this is valuable property that probably is suitable for protection. This is Sarasota County. Sarasota County does not identify this for protection or acquisition. And the reason is our program only does so if the property owner has said they're willing to have a conversation about the future of the property. Welland Park hasn't said that. If Welland Park were to call the county up and say, we should talk about protecting some of this, then they would designate this as a protection priority area, get the county commission to sign off on it, and then we could have talks about it. But that hasn't happened yet. So again, this is review, but we have this 25 acres of Sarasota County, 93 acres of Swiftmud here, these two mangrove islands. So one approach would be to just draw a line from the corner of the Swiftmud property to the corner of the county property. And make that into, so remember it said in there that you're supposed to be making contiguous connections between protected land. So you could have a coastal park or preserve that connected the 25 acres the county has with 56 acres here, with 93 acres here, and if they threw in two islands, you're talking about nearly 200-acre preserve along the Myakka. Another option would be to come across that way. That's about 73 acres. So why would you want to do this? Why would Welland Park want to do this? Well, first, you're creating a tremendous amenity. Remember, they were supposed to have that park further south, and that's apparently gone away. So this would double and connect up these parklands, so it could be an amenity for the Welland Park people. It's going to really simplify the surveying and all the work. You saw all those curvy lines where they had to wiggle in and out and do all that. This is just a straight line. You just shoot a line and you're done with it. It would take the unincorporated county property out of the mix. And I don't know if I showed that to you yet, but a portion of it is outside of the city limits. So that would simplify that. It would take most of the area of moderate wave action out of contention because they're supposed to be considering that. It would have relatively little impact on their proposed development. I think I have a graphic that will show you that in a minute. And it could be great public relations. They could announce that they'd help form a 200-acre park. I mean, who's done that lately? So part of it would already be land that was publicly owned, but they could take credit for it. So this white area here is owned by Welland Park, but it's outside of the city, so it would simplify that. This is where that, one version of where that park was supposed to be. So that's the end of my formal comments. We can talk about things, but basic thing I'm trying to get over is that Northport only has one chance to get it right on the Myakka River. It's not like there are 4 or 5 different parcels and they can try it, something here. You know, we just went through an experiment in Sarasota County where they had these things called conservation subdivisions. And they built a bunch of them, and then the staff ended up concluding these really aren't any different. They're really no better than regular subdivision. So sometimes it takes a while to get things right. And you only have one chance here regarding Myakka. And regarding all those lines that I didn't get completely sorted out, there are a multitude of professional people that believe there's going to be significant flooding issues. Some of them are evacuation issues, but most of them are flooding from the salt water, not from fresh water. And it's true if you go back and look at, I guess, Ian, like the area south of Claymore, that was inundated. I don't know what extent that was fresh water or salt water, but a lot of these projections are showing significant flooding. And if you had to say, I mean, my opinion is that Northport has plenty of flooding issues to deal with right now without bringing more down on its head. And they're talking about annexing all the manufactured housing on the other side of the river, and that had terrible issues. I came down, you may remember there was a big cleanup effort to go fetch as much of that styrofoam insulation out of those river islands. And you can go on the Google Earth right now and see the styrofoam still out there. So if Northport, if we were going back in time before GDC and asked how this should be developed, we wouldn't have done Northport, based on what we know now, we wouldn't have done Northport the way GDC did Northport. So there's a lot of baked-in problems that it's really challenging to solve. But creating more problems in the name of economic development or whatever doesn't seem to make any sense to me. And I'm hoping it's not too late for somebody to rethink how we're going to deal with this property immediately adjacent to the Myakka. And I'll shut up and we can have questions or
Can you go back to the map that showed the roads and the wetland?
yeah, probably.
Let's get
That
Right
one?
there. I'm just gonna make, I have no idea about flooding and the environment and whatnot, and I'm just learning from all my friends
Uh-huh.
as I go, but I'm usually a problem solver. I have a question. Well, first of all, Welland Park owns it, they can develop it however they want based on the zoning of the property, because we've hit that wall when we tried to fight for the Toledo 320 project, the various other projects that we tried to stop throughout the city from being developed. So with the new ULDC, it's getting kind of complicated because apparently the ULDC that went into effect last year is on hold, and I have not educated myself on this with the Florida state law that said that the cities couldn't do anything because we were under a state of emergency.
Yeah.
So that being said, but the thing is the fact that the city planning, was it the planning or the natural resource department, reached out to you is a good thing because it's like they want to do something.
Right.
And this is going to get developed and it will not go in front of the commissioners because as long as it's developed. But what I'm thinking is because what you just said, this worries me with all these lakes because they're going to flood these houses anyway. I don't care how much they build them up, 14 feet going up,
Yeah.
it'll still flood. But with all this area here and the effect on this, why can't they just do this,
Yeah.
cut it across,
Right.
get whatever houses they can build in there? But then also for the amenity, and I'm just going to throw this out there, could they build something like they have the little boardwalks to go out? Would that, how much would that ruin the area for the animals?
Yeah, well, the boardwalk wouldn't ruin it for the animals. There's photographs of panthers walking down the boardwalk in Park Street Swamp. But they like.
But I mean, would that be a good idea for an amenity? So this way, if we
Yeah,
draw
well,
people
that's what I'm
there.
That's what I'm saying. If they would just pull back, then and connect these two, then they could sell this as this, come to Welland Park and you're going to have
An
access.
ecotourism destination
Exactly,
spot.
Yeah.
So I think what Pam was referring to too, that's important to understand is the way that they changed the rules in Northport is such that if you meet the requirements for how the property is zoned, it can't be a discussion before the commission essentially.
Yep. Yeah.
So it's simply
They took it out of the hands, the ability to review projects.
So let me see if I understand this. So rezonings are no longer go to the Canton City Commission? They're decided
As long
administratively?
as you're rezoning it, so this is zoned as a village. So the village has a whole list of uses
Right.
that's allowed. So as
Right.
long as they develop it according to the uses for a village, then they don't have to go in front of the commission. If they want to make a variance to it and change something that's not in the village description, that's when it goes to the
Okay.
commission, and then they plead their case, and the commission says
So
yes or
does
no.
the administrative staff, are they compelled to follow any or all of these goals and objectives and policies that I quoted?
I would say no, I mean, just in our experience in the past
Yeah.
20
They're
years.
supposed
The
to.
ULDC's always had extremely strong environmental language in it.
Yeah.
I mean, specifically in regards to the issue like Warm Mineral Springs, it went so far as whoever wrote it very purposely
Yeah.
to use language that said this is not a land holding parcel, you know, explicitly implying that this is not to be developed. And of course, they were talking about hotels
Yeah,
and spas.
yeah.
They'll follow, the city staff will follow the ULDC, but based on when we were working with one of the developments, they come up with just like the generic, yes, this meets the, because one of those comp plan things is the area walkable? Well, can you get from, you know, can I walk from here to here or something like that? Is it walkable? They have to have it so that it's walkable. Well, then they'll say, yes, it meets that comp plan
Right.
definition. But in essence, does it really? And then what they also did was they were trying to do rezoning for something that was industrial, and they had all the line items to say, yes, this property meets it, but what they were doing was including the residential information in with the zoning. They didn't pull it out separately. So, and the city commission passed it. So it's like, it doesn't meet the ULDC based on one thing. They had to include the second half of the project.
So it was just really funny to see Kinley Horn say it's not intended to be exhaustive. Like you would hope people that were asking for permission to do something would be kind of exhaustive. And I don't know how many policies I read, but at least 20, I would guess. So it seems like, I don't know, it seems like it comes down to your staff. Your staff need to dig into the goals, objectives, and policies and put them in front of whichever.
What's the timeline?
I have no idea.
I mean, is this, but I mean, they've applied to?
Yes. It's a requested zoning map amendment. Now, it's an amendment. Does that mean we're doing everything congruent with the village and we don't need to go to the board? Or is the fact that it's an amendment mean that it's now elevated because they want to do something different? I don't
It has to
know.
go to, it's an amendment, it has to go to the board.
Okay, well, so now you're in a different ballgame.